employees is engaging with the next generation of our employees is absolutely critical. And I really can't encourage you enough to, really listen to these three speakers today and think about which ones or all of them you can actually engage with to start working with that next generation. So we've got three speakers. We've got David Brockway from Form the Future, who's really going to be looking at school level. We've then got Joe Smith, who's going to look at colleges. And then we've got Mo Horan who's going to be looking at graduate. That's the wrong way around, isn't it? That's Mo. It's Mo second, who's going to be looking at the college perspective, and then Joe finally is from ARU and going to be looking at colleges. So over to you.
Okay, so I'm just going to put myself on screen share. Bear with me 1 second. Can I have someone confirming? Yes, fantastic. Thumbs up all round. Thank you very much. So my name is David Brockway and I work for Form the Future. In case you haven't come across us, we are in the world of what was once upon a time called, I guess, careers guidance. There is a very handy acronym of CEIAG, which you'll see come up, and I will briefly cover for you because it is actually important, because that stands for careers, education, information, advice, and guidance. And that is what we do. We're the whole gamut. We cover a lot of areas, and that is what modern careers, education, and advice is about. To let you know what our mission is, as it says here, we're about sort of inspiration, helping young people see what's out there, letting them understand what exists in not just the world of work internationally, but quite particularly here in Cambridge, in the Greater Cambridge area, where they can access jobs. And the work isn't just letting people know what's out there, but really empowering them to feel like they can take part, join in, that they have a right to be getting these jobs, applying for them, and engaging in them. There's a huge amount of work that we do. I'm not going to cover it all today, of course. And I will sort of remind everybody that obviously we've got our website, and my contact details will be available at the end of the presentation. There will also be Q&A at the end after all three of us have presented to answer further questions. So please do write them down as you're going along, or pop them in the chat, which is being monitored as well. Today, I'm going to focus on really why employer engagement within our work, that is with primary and secondary schools, matters, why it's important, and crucially, why it's really beneficial to you. So in terms of how we do this, I've mentioned this point of empowering young people already. We don't just want students to feel like, here's some jobs that are just sort of, put in front of you for you to decide on what to do. And we want them to feel like they have the ability to engage with those and sort of look at those as options and opportunities for them. The key word that I want to draw our attention to here is informed decisions. Being able to make an informed decision means having a rounded understanding of what's involved in a job, what's involved in the skills and qualifications that require you to get there. All of these different areas of decision making are an important part of how a young person finds their way into their first role. And this takes time. It can't just be, a 15-minute, brief webinar of a student that prepares them for the rest of their working life. An individual organization will need to have potentially multiple interactions with young people, each of those interactions to be of good quality, in which questions can be asked, conversations can be had, where young people get the chance to interact. And the great news is that we have the ability to do that as an organization that is dedicated to providing CEIAG to young people. We're doing this week in, week out. We've got the links with the schools. We've got the ability to connect many different businesses and organizations in with those schools. And we've created the activities that one would take part in when speaking to the students. Where's my mouse gone? So I've mentioned sort of we work with students a lot, and the main way we do this is through schools. We work in primaries and secondaries. The majority of our work with primaries at present is STEM specific. So we also manage a program called Cambridge Launchpad, which some of you may have come across, where we run basically similar programs to regular work, but very much focused on STEM. So that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, for anyone who hasn't come across the term before. However, we do also run some primary school events throughout the year from our regular careers guidance on sort of beyond STEM work, which I'll touch on later on in the talk. The majority of our work is with year 7 and up, so that's 11 through to 18-year-olds. And we run lots of different types of activities, which some of which we do ourselves in-house, but the majority of which we need employers to come along, share their opportunities, share individual career journeys, talk about the skills, the roles, absolutely everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly about working in your sector. And that is because we need young people to have that proper understanding of what's involved when it comes to working in a given sector or job or organization, so that they can make that informed decision. The reality is this isn't just sales. We want to be honest with young people. And one of the things they need to know is to decide whether this job isn't right for them. Because let's face it, if you are hiring someone who thinks the position sounds brilliant, but actually coming into their first job, they realize the reality of it doesn't really suit the way they work, the way they do things, that's been a waste of your time in hiring that person and onboarding them. So making sure that that honest message is there, that you get the chance to tell them everything about working within your sector is really important. And that's what our activities are designed to do. As I said, I won't go into detail on them now. I am available at the end and post this session to answer those further questions. But the aim for us is to create quality opportunities for you as an employer to speak with multiple young people and share the reality of working in your organisation and your sector. In terms of businesses, well, as I've said, we need you to come along and take part. And it's not just that, it's an opportunity for those young people to learn and to gain this knowledge that I've been mentioning. But also every engagement with us is also an opportunity for your staff to practice their own skills in communication, in public speaking, in sort of supporting young people, in handling sort of sometimes tricky questions. So there is, a benefit for you as employers of getting involved in our activities. But crucially, of course, as we've got here on the slide, this can help you sort of find that future talent pipeline. The thing we always say, and this, having spoken to the other speakers, is common across all of us, is that if a young person doesn't know who you are, how are they going to work for you? This is the first and most crucial building block of any sort of marketing strategy, is for young people to know who you are. And it's never really too young to start, because sometimes you will spark a little bit of imagination in a young person sort of at year 7, only 11 years old, who hears about what you do for the first time and thinks, wow, this is brilliant. This matches with my hobbies and my ideas. And they can get really interested and immediately know who you are and consider what it is that you do as an option for them. In reality, though, we also know that not every young person is going to want to do what you do, which is why we're doing this all year round in multiple schools in our area, going and working with multiple year groups, so that if you engage with us on a regular basis, you will get the opportunity to speak to hundreds of students throughout the course of a year and really spread that message about who you are and the opportunities that you have in the future to a wider audience, so that you can capture those who may be interested, but also so that you can plant that seed in those who have heard about you for the first time or aren't sure what they want to do. You're getting on their radars, and you're making sure that by speaking to them first and sharing what you do, you're allowing them to see you as an option. So one of the phrases I like to use is this point of verbs over nouns. So when a lot of us were looking at sort of jobs and our first step into a career, we may have been thinking about being a firefighter, a secretary, a doctor, a clear delineated profession. Today, increasingly, the way in which a career works changes so that it's not so defined. So there might not be a specific, name of a career. Skills within careers are growing and expanding and very rapidly in technology sectors. One of the employers that we work with, if you were going to work with them, you might be called, I think it was a digital creative ninja. I mean, what is that? How are young people going to see these and think, oh, that's what I want to be when I'm older? what is really a trend in modern careers guidance and advice, information, education is talking about what's needed in order to carry out certain types of roles and how those skills are interchangeable. And again, that takes time. It's the type of thing that can't come across in, you know, a quick sort of 5-second job advert or sort of a social media post. It requires you to actually come in and speak to students and respond to their questions. And when I said here, you need to be in front of them, that does mean physically in front of them as well. We have run online events, but after the pandemic, we found that almost all of our schools said we're not doing that again. It was much, much harder for schools to organise virtual events. So if you want to be getting in front of young people, it does mean going there in person. I also mentioned social media a moment ago, and I think it's really important for us to understand that it's very difficult to get your message across to young people through social media and marketing. Even if you were on the right networks, and by the way, that does mean TikTok, Instagram, and sort of possibly YouTube. It doesn't mean LinkedIn. It doesn't mean sort of Twitter and some of the sort of social media platforms that a lot of businesses tend to be more used to. Even if you're on those, is your organization really going to be what's of most interest to those young people? It's a tough question to have to ask ourselves, but the truth is no. If there's anything from gaming videos to cat videos out there, that's going to be taking people's interest before our information about our job opportunities. So going into schools remains the best way of talking to young people about what you do and sharing your events and opportunities, openings, and so forth. All in all, we provide this range of opportunities for employers to come in, speak with young people. We give you the training, we give you ongoing support. We welcome absolutely anybody. If somebody is working and they've got a story to share about how they got there, that makes them a valid speaker. We can give people tips to raise their confidence and their ability, but we really do want to represent each and every job there is out there, because each and every job needs someone to fill it. We're particularly interested in getting younger staff along to our events because, of course, the students that we're talking to, especially if they are of 16, 17, 18, ready to look for their first job, we'll need to speak to someone who's got more relevant experience. So again, it's an opportunity for those younger staff to build some of their own confidence and abilities in engaging with young people. One of the last things I'm going to mention here is our primary careers fair. So I mentioned that we ran a primary careers event, sort of a big annual careers fair. It's one of our main ways of engaging with the younger students in our category. So this is year 5 and 6.
Young people, right?
Pardon?
Oh, sorry.
Someone, okay, accidentally off me. Yeah, what I wanted to say about the primary careers fair is we actually held this in conjunction with CRC. So Mo, who's going to speak next, is sort of being set up for a nice segue here. But the way this event worked was that we brought in lots of employers. So you can see here, university, physics department, fire service, and we brought in primary school students. We set up a sort of creative activity for them. They encouraged them to discover as much as they can about all the employers. And then in the afternoon, we shipped out and CRC came in. So there was that secondary opportunity for those employers to speak to students who are sort of 16 plus. And this is a useful allegory for us because quite often we come across employers who turn up to careers fairs for that 16 plus category, seeing it as a recruitment opportunity, but then have come across this barrier that none of the young people know who they are. They've got to explain from scratch who we are, what we do, what our sector is. And so it can feel like a waste of time, or that you have to spend so much time explaining what you do that it's difficult to actually have those quality conversations about what you have to offer. And so our point here of using this sort of story of this careers fair is that had you been there for the primary one, explaining to those students 10 years previously what you do and who you are, that work is already done. And you can have the opportunities through Form the Future to be doing that in multiple age groups across secondary school, so that by the time you are engaging with students at the age when they're ready to start applying for a job or sort of looking for those next steps, so much of that work is done. You've done your marketing, you've done your communications, you've had the opportunity to share with them who you are, And then once they're at an age when they're ready to apply, it's going to be so much easier for them and for you to understand, what to sort of get that conversation started and get them on board. Very last thing I'll say is we are working with an awful lot of schools and students. I think these stats we pulled at the end of last year, so these will be growing quite a lot this year. We have so many opportunities, and we're all going to share some best practice at the end, so I won't go into too much detail about sort of why it's really important now to go with other schools, but at multiple schools. But yeah, we are reaching all over the Greater Cambridge area. We are expanding, hopefully, this year into more parts of Cambridgeshire, and we're making those bonds with schools. We've got teachers who we know well, we've got those relationships set up. So we've done so much of that hard work for businesses. So when it comes to getting involved in schools, it's really just a matter of asking us where you can go and talk to people, and we do the work for you. So with that, I will stop sharing and remind everybody that we will have time for questions at the end. So please do take note of anything that you have to ask, and hand over to Mo.
Afternoon, everybody. All right, bear with me a second while I just get my screen up. Bear with me. There we go. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see that? Excellent. Thank you very much, David. So yeah, thank you very much for that, David, and kind of tying in with the next bit. My name's Mo Horan. I'm the Director of Employer Engagement at Cambridge Regional College. So, further education establishments such as Cambridge Regional College, as well as sixth form colleges, are where kind of, school leavers move on to after they've completed school, if they're staying in full-time education or embarking on an apprenticeship. So we're the kind of next natural step for you to be able to engage with from education establishments. So there are a number, a bit like David was saying, there are a number of different ways you can engage with post-16 students. And I'm going to go into a bit of detail about a couple of these, but these just give you an idea of all the different ways we have employers engage with our students. And we welcome any type of engagement, whether it's be a one-off or whether it's a regular pattern of engagement. It's just very, very powerful for our students to be exposed to anybody working out in the industry that they're potentially working in. Anybody that walks around the college wearing a college badge like I do is seen as a teacher, and you probably remember from when you were at school, do teachers know it all? No, they're a bit like your mum. When you speak to somebody else, all of a sudden, even though it might be what the teacher's been saying to them for the last 20 years, it's a lot more powerful when somebody external says it. So we really do welcome any opportunity to put our students in front of anybody that's going to help them make those informed decisions for their future. So just to touch upon some of the different ways you could engage with us and our students to help support your future talent pipeline development is to have input into our curriculum design. So as a vocational college, we obviously are teaching specific skills and specific jobs, and we welcome the opportunity to hear from you about any changes to industry standards, industry specifications. We go through a kind of curriculum planning process every year to really look at what we're teaching. Is it still industry relevant? What is it that the local labour market are looking for, and which we can shape our curriculum around, what is required. So we have industry specific or subject specific employer forums every year, where employers will come together and let us know, are we teaching this? What's the next trend coming out? And then on the other side of that, it also gives our staff, our teachers and assessors, the opportunity to speak to people that are still working out in industry and kind of update themselves on professional standards. Our teachers and assessors go out into the workplace for professional updating days every year in order to keep up to date with their industry. So obviously those links with employers supports that as well. We've got workplace tours, very powerful for students, young people to see working environments. Somebody might say, I want to be an engineer. that's very broad. There's very many differing engineering companies out there, and the working environments will differ greatly from one industry to another. So instead of assumptions being made or kind of preconceived ideas about what a working environment might be like, it's really powerful to allow our students to experience that so that they can really help make those decisions. So even just a tour of anybody's facilities to look at what the working environment is like would greatly help them. Guest speakers, following from what David said, anytime we can get a speaker in talking about their story, their industry, how they got to where they were, is always powerful. And supports the personal development of the people doing the guest speaking as well. It takes a lot of practice and skill to become adept at presenting and talking to people, and again, just exposing your employees and allowing them the opportunity to do that will help build their skills as well, as also get your brand awareness and your company name out in front of the potential employees of the future. We work with employers as well who give us project briefs for certain students. So just give kind of an example of one. We might work with a local school who gives us a project brief on designing and making some wooden play equipment, and for our carpentry students, for example. So the school would come out and give us, would talk to the students about what they want, and the students would then work as a team, report back on to the employer, and produce the finished product at the end of it. And again, as working closely with the employer. Careers fairs. So as David said, we ran a very successful large annual careers fair last year, and where people got the opportunity to engage with the younger range, moving on to the post-16, and then we did actually open it up and advertise it out into the local community, and we actually had members of the public come in as well, kind of after 5 o'clock time. So you really did get the opportunity to engage with a wide variety of people at our careers fairs. And then work placement is another really key part of how you can engage with students that can have quite a quick, could be quite a quick solution as well to support any kind of difficult recruitment challenges at the moment. And that's what I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So all students, 16 to 19, are expected to engage in some form of work-related activity, and ideally a work experience placement on site somewhere in order to support their study programme holistically. And there are a number of different types of placements depending on the type of course that our students are on. And again, we would welcome any type of engagement for our employers, whatever they could offer in order to support the students. To give you an idea, in terms of planning, if you were thinking this was something that you thought you could offer and benefit from, we have a number of students that are expected to complete what's called an industry placement, which is linked to the new T-level qualifications that are coming out. And it's quite a large, meaty placement of 315 hours, which is approximately 45 days of activity in a quality placement directly linked to the subject area of their course. So, for example, if we've got somebody on a hairdressing course, then their industry placement needs to be within a hairdressing setting. They need to be able to apply the knowledge that they're learning in our classroom within a real life work setting, for it to be a quality industry placement. We've been doing these industry placements we're coming into our 4th year. Obviously, during COVID, we had a huge impact on how our students were able to engage with these placements. So we did take a bit of a dip on what we were able to do, but what we are seeing post-COVID now is that more and more employers are coming to us and engaging with these large placements as the opportunity to identify students that are completing studies now as the potential employees for next year or potential apprentices for next year. because it's basically a try before you buy, for both parties, both for the student and for the employer, to really gauge, is there a good culture fit? The student will really understand what your organisation is about, what is expected of you, will see the working environment, will be there, and will know whether it is a good next step for them. And we've had, a large number of our apprentices that started this year that came and were recruited via an industry placement last year. It also means that you cut out things like advertising, the time it takes to shortlist and interview candidates. Young people as well are, applying for jobs and going through interview processes are very daunting for young people where they haven't got a lot of experience to draw upon. This is an alternative way of identifying people that are, a good fit for your business. And so we really are seeing an increase in the number of people that are using that. Yes, to help benefit the student and benefit the employer, but as a really good next step recruitment tool as well. So that's probably our kind of meatiest placement. Other work experience, so if you didn't think that was something you could engage with or you could commit to, other students that aren't on industry placements would be expected to take kind of 30 hours of activity within a work setting. And again, that just enables them to have see what it's like in your industry, get your brand awareness out there. But 30 hours as well, it may be that you identify somebody that really shines, and again could be an opportunity for you to highlight future employees. There are other subjects within our within the college that have curriculum placement, so that is where they have to undertake a placement in order to achieve the qualification, and they are very, very specific to early years education, childcare, and health and social care. So if there are any employers that are within those settings that think that they could support students on placements, then we would be delighted to hear from you. And then just to kind of round off all the different types of placements, we also have a very large special educational needs department at Cambridge Regional College, which we're very proud of. And we run a supported internship programme, so it's for our higher needs students. So this is, again, a placement where they get a lot of support from the college to start with, but then gets, as the placement goes through, that level of support is reduced in order to really build the independent skills of the students with these needs. So that's around placements. And as I said, we would, any kind of engagement, we would be more than happy to talk to you about to see how we could work together. But with regards to kind of timings of placements, when dealing with all education establishments, we obviously do kind of work within the academic year as well. So just for your information, now is about the time, especially from an industry placement perspective, and I know Joe will kind of come on to kind of placements at university after me. Now is about a good time to be kind of talking and looking and setting up any type of placement if it's something you did want to engage with, as a potential to then students that are completing with us come June next year. Another, I just wanted to kind of show something that's a bit creative that we've worked with a number of employers. We've done a few employer showcases, we've called them. They're very new, and it came as an idea because we were talking to they're a locally based company, but they're a global company called Magdalene, who are based in St Ives, and they were recruiting for apprentices, and they weren't getting the level of interest that they thought they should be getting from being somebody who was very large and globally recognised in their industry. And kind of after a number of conversations with them, we were like, you may be very, very, very well known in your industry and globally. However, you're not necessarily known in the local area that you work in, which is where you are trying to attract people from. So together we came up with a kind of a joint recruitment event, basically showcasing them as an employer, and it just is a really good case study of where consistent and regular engagement and getting your name out there really, really does work. So they did one showcase where they kind of advertised it locally. We advertised it to our students and out in any newsletters. And it really was just a case of come along and find out who we are, what type of opportunities we have in the local area, and just come and find out a bit more about us. There was a few nibbles and a drink, which normally gets people to these events as well. And then they also came along to the careers fair. And then they also followed up after the careers fair another one of these employer showcases. And as a result, they actually had 30 applications in the end for a couple of their business administrator apprentice roles, which they weren't getting anywhere near that type of interest to start with. So this really does just kind of show that it can work, but as part of a long-term, not a one-hit wonder type strategy. And here's just some pictures of them at some of our events, and Cambridge Regional College, attends the events with them to give any information about any of the training that goes alongside their opportunities. And then the other company that we're working with closely at the moment as well is Munro, who are a local business. They are a local building business. Again, they're very, very well known in the local area. You may have seen their vans around, but they saw a dip in the kind of interest in their apprenticeship vacancies. And so they've been working really closely with us again to put on these series of events. And we had that picture there is from an event we held with them last week at their premises, where they're already looking and starting to identify their future employees and apprentices for kind of next September. So they're really kind of, getting ahead of themselves. So I'm going to pass over to Joe now, and for the next part. And Joe, I just have to tell you, I can't see you on my screen, so you're going to have to tell me to click. I'm afraid.
That's fine, thank you. So my name is Jo. I'm the Placements and Employer Engagement Manager at Anglia Ruskin University, or ARU. So we have 3 core campuses, one in Chelmsford and Essex, which is the one I typically am based at, one in Cambridge, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and a site in Peterborough as well. So I'm going to follow on. So we've done it in age. So we've gone from primary to FE to now higher education. So the students we work with are typically 18 plus. Next, please, May. Thank you. So sort of keeping informed with the others, this is a really quick overview of all the different ways that you might choose to engage with ARU and our students, and I'll pick a couple of these to focus on. So we've got our own recruitment agency, ARU Temps. So this works really nicely for perhaps a small business who doesn't want to take someone on payroll at the moment, either because of the paperwork aggravation that comes with it, or just it doesn't suit your business model. But they also look at things like short-term temporary contracts, or if you've got perhaps an event and you need some catering staff that you wouldn't normally have for those roles, but you need for a short-term opportunity. Our students are all actively registered with the agency, and they would work in the same way as a recruitment agency in terms of sourcing students for you, filling those vacancies, and would work through the opportunity you had. We have partnership projects, careers fairs and employer events, just as the other speakers have mentioned. We do a lot around assessment centres, so we welcome employers in to mock those up, because it's probably the bit that students get most fearful of. I think it's the unknown, so it's definitely been an area for us that we're always really keen to get employers in, just to kind of demyth some of it and to make it less scary. Placements, which is one of the areas I'm going to cover in a bit more detail. Mentoring, we have the graduate recruitment, so our students that have done their standard 3 years and then are looking for their first, as they call it, proper job after university. And then employer consultancy. So we work with a lot of employers who are at the point where they want to do something, they want to make a regular commitment to taking on someone who's early on in their career, but doesn't quite know how to. So because we work with such a range of employers, we've seen the good, the bad and the ugly of recruitment schemes and graduate programmes. So try and share some of that knowledge with our colleagues that we work with. So I said I'd focus on placements as one of the areas. We have 2 main types of placements when you step outside of our medical. So we have a big area of health, education and medical students. So nurses, midwives, we've got a doctoral school in Chelmsford. They're a whole separate animal. They are very, very different to these. These are your typical sandwich year scenarios. So the ones I'm talking through now are either undergraduate or postgraduate students who are wedging an experience effectively in their studies. So for the undergraduate students, they do 2 years of study. they go out for a year in industry, and then they come back for a final year in study. They can be between sort of 9 and 15 months long. So for our typical academic year, they tend to start in the summer. It officially starts counting in September, and then they work through almost up until they return in the final year. And one of the things that quite a number of our students do is they actually remain with that employer throughout their final year on a part-time basis around their studies or on a project basis. So that is also an option that employers quite often do, because it helps retain the talent. We do also have January starters. They, because of Christmas and no one's starting a job in Christmas, they do tend to be more like a year long. So they start in the January and work through to Christmas following year. Salary there says 16 to 21. I would say post-pandemic, we've seen that go up by a couple of grand. So I would say that more and more of them are starting on 18, 19. And we've seen it go up as high as 30. It really depends on the industry. If you're talking about computer science, you're not going to get away with paying 16, 17. If you're talking about a more generic business admin, then possibly. It really does depend. We are really conscious that our students come from an absolute wealth of economic backgrounds, and we all know that the world we're in at the moment in terms of cost of living, we are really keen to work with employers to make sure that the salary is at a level that is affordable for the business, but is also doable for the student. We've seen some opportunities recently that are absolutely fantastic, but our students can't take them because they've got rent and they've got costs to pay. So if you are thinking about looking at something like this, I would really encourage you to look at budget and what resource you've got available to you, because it does open up your opportunity to a much broader range of students if you're able to attach a salary to it. Postgraduate works in a very similar way. We have two sort of areas. So we have at the moment, we have a 12-week placement for our computing and artificial intelligence and big data students. And our MBA and MSc business courses are 24 weeks, working exactly the same way. They're just slightly different models of teaching. But essentially what you would get is that student come out, they've not got any study during that time, and they're with you as a full-time employee. So the benefits, you could get as organised as to have a traditional rolling model. Some of our businesses have got organised enough that the last placement student does a handover to the new one, which is even less hassle for you. So that's a nice benefit. What I'd say to a lot of employers is don't think it has to be a placement opportunity to start with. A lot of our employers are using this for skills gaps. So a maternity cover, a fixed term role, that project that's been on the whiteboard for years that never gets done because it's a nice to do rather than a must do. That's a really nice project for a placement student to work on. It's a flexible extra resource. It's very low risk, it's very low cost in comparison, and it just gives you that opportunity to focus on something that you might not otherwise get to. Now, students do occasionally have the very odd random ideas that they bring to the business, but generally speaking, they bring a fresh perspective. They will ask questions that probably over decades of working, we have stopped asking because we generally know the answer. They question in a way that is different to an employee who's been out in industry for a long time, and they bring new ideas. They also can really bring the spirits up of a team who's been working for a long time as a group and a set sort of number of people. They give a nice opportunity for mentoring and leadership for your current staff. So if you've got a hierarchy at the moment where you know you've got someone who wants management, but you just don't have that space for them, a placement student is a really nice way of kind of supporting your existing member of staff with their development and having an extra resource in the business. So it's a pipeline, it's new ideas. It could just solve an immediate problem you've got for staffing or be part of a much bigger recruitment pipeline. So kind of extending from that, so sort of the wider benefits is it does raise your company profile. It promotes your values, it promotes your ethos, it shows your CSR, your identity. I think it's really difficult when you meet with an employer who's like, oh, we're very well known and everybody knows us and I don't know why no one applies to us. You are probably very well known in your industry. Lots of our students will have never heard of you. We've had time and time again students from mechanical engineering, I want to work for Ford, as if Ford is the only organisation in the motoring industry and they don't have the A-levels for it. They're not going to qualify for it. It's too competitive. And then you peel back the layer of all these SMEs that sit underneath who supply Ford, who do R&D for Ford, who, you know, are part of their consultancy. and actually get way less applications and are way less competitive and generally work on far more exciting stuff than Ford. Don't tell Ford I said that, just realised this is recorded. But for me, there's so much value there, but students will have never heard of these organisations. So it is more work, but for me, the opportunity to get your name out there for students, once we've got an employer in, then it's easy because we get that student to come and tell our next round of students how great they are as an employer, and then they fill it, and then 3-4 years down the line, it's a really hot placement that we have a huge amount of interest in. But it is, as Mo and David have both said, it's this drip feed of little engagements building that awareness. I've put in here some categories around our students because I think it's really important to highlight lots of companies at the moment are making statements about wanting to diversify their workforce. But what does that actually look like? So that looks like working with employers, working with educational institutes who've got this in mind. So for us, 36% of our students identify as Black, Asian or minority ethnic. And I don't know if any of you are familiar, but we have categories for widening participation that we work to. So students who are first in family to go to university, or come from a care background, or have a registered disability, or come from a postcode where you're less likely to go to university, and numerous others. 94% of our students categorise as at least one of those, and 76% are two. Now, I think when you look at some of these students, the fact they are at university at all is a huge accomplishment. It's potentially kind of undone everything families have done before, or what is expected of them from where they live. And then they're motivated enough to want to go and get a placement before they graduate. They want to go out and do this. They're such amazing talent to have in the business, but they often lack in confidence. So for me, again, those big schemes, they're not going to apply to. But an employer who's come in, who's engaged with us, who came and had a chat with them and said, oh, you know, my mum and dad didn't go to university, or have made themselves accessible and have humanised themselves, those students apply for those roles. And it is incredible. It's why I love my job. And without getting soppy over it, it's why it's such a lovely journey to watch, because it has such an impact on the student. And then the business is always more positive about it than even they thought they would be, because the impact and the sort of the change that it can have for their culture is massive. So I would encourage you to think about, you know, we all make the claim we want to be better at diversification, but what are we doing to actually help that? And it will obviously help our application numbers. So students, for us, this placements is a massive part of our ARU strategy. Our focus is around increasing real world work opportunities for all our students, no matter their circumstances. They get valuable, relevant, degree-related experience, and they absolutely leave university more rounded, more prepared, more confident. You can see the students that have been out on placement. A student said to me the other day, "You didn't tell me the truth. You didn't tell me that when I went on placement, I would have loads of money, but no time to spend it. And now I'm at uni, I have loads of time and no money." And I was like, welcome to the world. So they do have this reality check of 9 till 5 is standard, and they have all of these moments. And you know, you will get those. I don't know how to book a dentist appointment because I've now got to do it Monday. I don't know when to do it. I'm at work all the time, and you will have those. But equally, it's lovely to be part of that transition and that professionalism. And it's like I say, it's just a low risk way of working with students. So recruiting a placement student with us is free of charge. There's a link here, it'll go out, I would imagine, on the slides. But essentially you log on to a portal with us, you upload the vacancy, and then we actively promote the role to students. And for some, that's all we do, and that works. For others, we get much more involved in terms of managing applications, vetting candidates, organising interviews, organising for you to come onto campus to promote your opportunity, run some meet and greets. It really can vary depending on what you can commit to and what you think you need for the number of students you're looking for. Our summer starts are confirmed by students by the 1st of August, and our January starts are confirmed by the 1st of December, which is why I would really echo what Mo particularly has said in terms of engaging early. Our students are now actively applying for summer roles. So yes, we do always get the last minute.coms, but if you're talking about opening up to the biggest group of candidates you can, then I would definitely think, you know, certainly 9 months ahead of when you're looking ideally. So if that's all feeling too much and someone joining your business for up to a year is too much, but you want to do something with HE, then another opportunity similar to the projects that Mo was talking about is a live brief. So again, as part of our commitment to make sure that all students get access to real world work experience, we have made sure that it is embedded into our curriculum. So it's not the expectation that students have to do more than their studies to get that experience. So it's an opportunity for you to present our students with a real world task, and for them to come up with an answer to your problem or a summary of your sort of solution or proposal. You specify an activity and they go away and work on it. So international business, we might get a small organisation come in who say they're looking to work with suppliers from China. What would that look like for us? And off they would go and work out what that might look like. Or they might be looking to launch a new product, or they might be doing something very technical in engineering that I'm not going to begin to understand, but they're looking at using a new part or a new material, and what would the pros and cons be of that. And again, that varies from different levels. So our first years would be a much lighter touch through to our final years, where it would tend to be very small groups you were working with in much more of a consultancy way. So again, much lower commitment option in comparison to a placement. You're probably talking 3 to 6 hours per live brief that you got involved in. As I said, it would vary as to what you did. You could be presenting to a group of 100 students and they would present 100 versions of almost the same project. Don't worry, you don't have to read them all. Normally the lecturer would sift the top kind of 2 or 3 for you to look at. If you want to look at them all, you're more than welcome. But it is a really good way to build brand awareness. We've seen a direct correlation between those employers who get involved in curriculum and then applications for any jobs they have in the future, because they're like, oh, they were that company who came in and did that thing a couple of years ago, and you become somebody to them, you're on their radar. So you become familiar, and familiarity breeds that kind of confidence for them to then apply for your roles. Again, working on a trimester basis, we have our autumn term, which is what we're in now, and our spring term after the Christmas break, where we would have live briefs in each trimester. So it's, again, just an opportunity to get fresh eyes on a project or a problem that you might have as an organisation. And then I think I'm going to pass back to David. We've got some key points for you to take away from today.
Yes, thanks very much, Jo. So I mentioned during my presentation earlier that there were some extra little bits that I would save to the end. So these are some of the sort of those key messages that we really want you to take away and remember. I know that some of you might need to sort of persuade other colleagues or other members of staff as to why engaging with all of us is a good thing. From our perspective, there's this first message of it's never too early to engage. I did mention during the presentation that even if you're just opening someone's eyes to what exists, the sooner you do that and the earlier on someone's radar, the better. And also there's that amazing chance to inspire young people. And when we're younger, it is when we can sort of form big dreams and ideas. So you are having a magnitude greater impact if you're working with someone when they're younger. And also when it comes to looking at quite specific sort of year 7 or 8, and then to maybe year 10 or 11, you have an opportunity to influence the subject decisions that someone makes when they go on to do their GCSEs, A-levels, T-levels, etc. If you come in before a young person makes that choice, they can include knowledge and understanding of the sector you work in that decision. So they're making that informed decision, aware of what they'll need to study if they're going to go down that route. If you come in and talk to someone when they're 17 and they just realize, oh no, I should have been studying STEM all this time, then it's a bit too late. The other point we've got here is this is about more than just student engagement. So we actually do run sessions for parents and guardians as well, where there's an opportunity to speak to them about the opportunities that you have. And we also run sessions for parents and guardians on how to support their student or their young person when it comes to looking for jobs, applying for jobs. We all know that so often it is that older adult in a young person's life who's the one who suggests to them, maybe you should consider applying for work experience here. So that sort of more holistic approach to all of the influences in a young person's life is really important, and we help reach all of those areas, and are also increasing our teacher training and outreach to help teachers be able to continue with that drip feed of careers understanding to young people. Our other point is that ongoing interventions are more successful. So having the opportunity to visit students multiple times, to visit them over multiple year group ages, and to have a different variety of activities that students engage in to learn about careers is really important, and is more likely to have that impact that leads them to making choices related to a specific career. And we've got all of those going on. We've got multiple different types of activities of different age groups, targeting different methods, different skills, etc. So we do the whole range. And the last point here is to engage with as many schools as possible. We are funded to work with all of the 20 main state secondary and sixth form college is in the Greater Cambridge area. And we work with more beyond that on a sort of a less regular basis, but growing as we grow as ourselves. That means that you are getting in front of as many students as possible. I mentioned earlier that it is just a reality, but not every student in a classroom is going to want to do what you do or is interested in what you have to offer. And that's just a fact of life. So it is important to go around to as many schools as you can. A lot of employers have a target school who's geographically close to them, but it's inevitable that not every student coming out of that, the graduate year of that school is going to have the will or the ability to work with you. So you need to be going to a range of schools, getting your messages across to as many of them as possible, so that you can get that message out there, but also so that it's more egalitarian for the student, so that every young person in our region has the opportunity to hear about what you do, and therefore has the ability to apply to work with you should they wish to. And with that, I think we're back to Mo.
Thanks, David. Doesn't help that our names rhyme, does it, Joe? I think it's causing a lot of confusion this afternoon. Yes, it's one of the key messages from kind of my experience is don't assume anything. As I said before, you may know who you are very clearly and where you sit in your industry marketplace, but that doesn't mean that other people do. So when talking to young people and engaging with new employees to your business, just be really clear about what you do, what type of roles they cover. Try not to use acronyms and that type of thing, because without that experience, it would just confuse young people. Any engagement is welcome. Again, I'm sure all of us would say this, whether it's a one-off coming to talk to our students, we see the benefit of that. Obviously, regular interventions would benefit you more, but from our perspective and helping our students make those informed decisions, any engagement we can get with them with employers is going to benefit them, and you would be doing good if you were able to give that time. Apprenticeships, we haven't gone into a lot of detail on there because there's lots and lots of information out there on apprenticeships. It is an excellent way to bring new young talent into your business, but we just wanted to kind of just make a point that you have to remember that apprentices are employees first and foremost, so they're not necessarily a quick recruitment solution. We have seen over the last few months where recruitment challenges are building, where people come and go say, look, I've been looking for a certain employee, I'm just not getting any applicants, so can I have an apprentice instead, please? Kind of expecting us to have a little classroom of them that we can just pass over to you. Unfortunately, that isn't how it works, and recruiting apprentices is just as challenging at the moment as recruiting experienced members of staff. And also plan your timelines. I think I've kind of touched on it before. If you're looking at regular engagement, talk to any one of us, and we can help and support and talk you through the key timelines, and you can come up with a plan on when you're going to get maximum benefit out of your engagement on opportunities around our academic years. But now is the time, genuinely, to be starting looking at what could I do over the coming months to really get my brand and my name in front of those students that are potentially going to be looking for jobs come June, when they are looking for their next step. Over to you, Jo.
Thank you. Very quickly, because I'd like to give people time for questions. I'd just say keep an open mind. Don't assume it has to be a business student for a business role. Some of our analytics roles are filled by a forensic science student because they're very numerate and they've got great skills. So please keep an open mind. We've covered it quite a bit, but don't assume students know who you are. And I think the final point from all three of us is there's no guarantee with any of this, but we'll guarantee if you do nothing, you'll get nothing, is probably the takeaway with all of it. It can form and should form part of your medium to long-term recruitment strategy. There is so many different ways to engage. We have barely scratched the surface on the way to do it, but I've given you a spotlight on some of them. So please do think about it. It is, you know, it's a great way to start building that pipeline, but I do appreciate it's a fair amount of legwork for a longer term return. But has anyone got any questions for anyone?
Yeah, Zoe, is there any messages in the chat? Because whilst I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat function.
We've got a couple of thank yous. Great session. Yep, doesn't look like we've got any questions, just a lot of thank yous, which is lovely.
No worries. Am I right in saying that this presentation will be shared with all the attendees?
Yeah, I'll send that round to everyone along with the link for the recording as well. So if you did want to pass it on to anyone in your organisation or anyone that was interested that couldn't attend, then you'll be able to pass that on as well.
No, fantastic. It's probably information overload. I think we all spoke for a little bit longer than we were anticipating. So hopefully we haven't blown your brains in any way. But our details are on here. We're more than welcome to pick up on any points and go into a bit more detail with anybody should they once they digest everything we've said.
That's great. And I have put your emails in the chat as well, so people can follow up with you directly. So thank you very much. Like you say, huge amount of information for people to go and digest there, but it's really positive. You know, there are so many options for people and so many ways to get involved. So I think that was really great. So thank you very much to David, Mo and Joe for taking the time to do that, and I'm sure a few people will be pinging you. We've got like 2 minutes, so all I'm going to do is just say the 4th session that we have on recruitment is with Bailey Fisher, and it's talking about executive leadership. It's an in-person event on the 17th of November, so either if you're still here or you're listening to the recording, then do feel free to book on that session too. Other than that, Zoe, any last minute thoughts or anything that you need to say?
Nothing from our side, just thank you to our speakers and thanks everyone for attending. We've got a good turnout, so I'm quite happy with that.
It's great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks
everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.